Have you ever had that moment where you unlock your phone without thinking, scroll for a second, and suddenly realize you're already doing what you wanted to do? Without searching, without adjusting, without fixing anything. That quiet moment where technology stops demanding attention and just flows with you. That's the kind of feeling One UI 8.5 is aiming for. Not loud, not flashy, just right. And what makes it special isn't one big feature. It's the way everything feels stitched together, like it understands how you live. Imagine waking up and picking up your phone half asleep. No sharp brightness blasting your eyes. No chaotic notifications yelling for attention. The screen wakes up gently, almost respectfully, adjusting itself the way it knows you prefer at that hour. The lock screen doesn't overwhelm you, it gives you just enough time. A couple of important notifications. A calm background that feels soft, not sterile. You don't think about it, but your brain notices the comfort. As you unlock, the first thing you feel isn't speed, it's smoothness. There's a difference. Speed is raw, smoothness is intentional. One UI 8.5 leans into that idea completely. The animations don't rush ahead of your finger or lag behind it. They follow you. When you swipe, the UI moves like it has weight. When you tap, there's a subtle response that feels almost physical. It's the kind of detail that makes the phone feel expensive even if the hardware hasn't changed. The home screen feels calmer than before. Not empty, not busy, balanced. Icons look softer, more refined, with just enough depth to feel touchable. They don't scream for attention anymore. They sit there patiently, like tools laid out neatly on a desk. And as you start using the phone more, something interesting happens. The layout begins to feel more you. Apps you use often feel closer. Ones you barely touch fade into the background. It's not magic, it's the system learning, quietly rearranging priorities without asking you to dig through settings. Then there's the quick panel. And this is where One UI 8.5 starts to feel alive. You pull it down and it doesn't feel like a static sheet anymore. It feels adaptive. The toggles you use most feel more prominent. The ones you rarely touch step back. Brightness and volume don't just exist, they behave. They respond based on time, usage, and environment. It's subtle, but after a while you realize you're making fewer adjustments because the phone is already doing it for you. As the day goes on, the intelligence of the system becomes more obvious. Apps open faster not because the phone is forcing speed, but because it knows what you'll probably open next. The keyboard feels more natural, predicting sentences the way you actually talk instead of forcing textbook grammar. Typing feels less like correcting mistakes and more like finishing thoughts. Multitasking feels different too. Not heavier, lighter. You can jump between apps without that tiny moment of hesitation. Split screen feels natural instead of cramped. Floating windows move smoothly, like they belong there. You stop thinking of your phone as a single, task device and start treating it like a small personal workstation that adapts to whatever you're doing. What's interesting is how One UI 8.5 handles silence. When nothing is happening, the phone doesn't try to entertain you. It stays calm. No unnecessary animations, no background noise. Just a clean, stable experience that waits for your input. That alone makes the phone feel more premium than any flashy animation ever could. And then there's the way it handles your habits. Over time, the system learns when you're most active, when you usually relax, when you check certain apps. It doesn't shove suggestions in your face. It simply prepares things in the background. Apps open faster at the times you usually use them. Battery usage adjusts based on your routine. Performance ramps up when you need it and steps back when you don't. It feels like the phone is pacing itself alongside you. The camera experience fits this philosophy perfectly. It's not about throwing 100 modes at you. It's about making every shot easier. The viewfinder feels more stable. The shutter responds more naturally. Photos look cleaner without looking artificial. Skin tones stay real. Shadows feel balanced. And editing doesn't feel like work anymore. Just a few taps and the photo looks the way you remember it. Even small things feel improved. Scrolling feels lighter. App switching feels quicker. Notifications feel smarter. You start noticing that you're spending less time managing your phone and more time actually using it. That's the kind of change that doesn't show up in spec sheets but matters every single day. What makes One UI 8.5 stand out isn't that it tries to be revolutionary. It's that it respects your time. It respects your habits. It respects the fact that your phone is a tool, not a toy. And instead of demanding attention, it quietly supports you in the background, doing hundreds of tiny things right. By the time you've used it for a while, something funny happens. You stop thinking about updates. You stop chasing features. You just enjoy using your phone again. And when you pick up another device that doesn't have this level of refinement, you immediately feel what's missing. The calm, the flow, the effortlessness. This is the kind of update that doesn't try to impress you in the first 5 minutes. It wins you over slowly, naturally. And once it does, it's very hard to go back. And this is only the beginning. When you keep using OneUI 8.5 for a while, something interesting starts happening. You stop thinking about the phone as a device and start treating it more like a companion that understands your rhythm. Not in a dramatic sci-fi way, but in small, human ways. The kind of changes that don't shout for attention, yet slowly make everything feel easier. For example, the way the phone reacts to your daily routine feels almost instinctive. In the morning, when your eyes are still half open and your mind isn't fully awake, the interface feels softer. Colors look slightly calmer. Brightness doesn't jump suddenly. Notifications don't flood the screen. It's like the phone knows this is your quiet time. Then as the day moves on, everything becomes sharper, faster, more energetic, not because you changed anything, but because the system adjusted itself around you. One of the most impressive things is how OneUI 8.5 handles focus without forcing you into focus modes. You're not constantly being asked to choose profiles or schedules. Instead, the phone learns naturally. If you usually open certain apps during work or study time, they become easier to access. If you ignore notifications from specific apps during certain hours, the system gently pushes them aside later without muting them completely. It feels respectful, like the phone is helping instead of controlling. Scrolling feels different too. There's a kind of softness in motion that's hard to describe until you use it. Lists glide instead of snapping. Menus don't pop open, they unfold. Even switching between apps feels smoother, like the phone is breathing with your fingers. This is the kind of polish that doesn't show up in spec sheets, but makes a massive difference in daily use. And then there's the personalization. Not the loud kind with flashy themes, but the quiet, thoughtful kind. Wallpapers subtly influence UI colors. Widgets adjust spacing based on how you use your screen. Even the font weight feels tuned for comfort rather than style alone. The phone starts to feel less like Samsung's design and more like your design, without you spending hours customizing anything. Notifications in OneUI 8.5 deserve special mention because they finally feel intelligent. Important messages rise naturally, less important ones fade into the background. Group notifications actually make sense now, and the preview system is smarter about what it shows and what it hides. You no longer feel the urge to clear everything just to feel organized, because the phone already does that mental work for you. The home screen experience feels calmer than ever. Icons don't scream for attention. Animations don't distract you. Everything feels balanced. Even when you install new apps, the layout doesn't feel messy. It's like the system quietly rearranges things to maintain visual peace. That may sound small, but it creates a huge difference in how long you enjoy using your phone without feeling overwhelmed. OneUI 8.5 also makes multitasking feel natural instead of technical. Opening two apps side by side feels smooth and logical. Resizing windows doesn't interrupt your flow. Floating windows don't feel like pop-ups anymore. They feel like tools that are meant to be there. You can reply to messages, check notes, or control music without ever breaking concentration. And then there's the performance. Not the kind that shows up in benchmarks, but the kind you feel. Apps launch quicker, yes, but more importantly, they stay smooth. No random stutters. No sudden slowdowns after hours of use. The system feels stable, like it's built to last all day without needing a restart. Battery behavior is also smarter in a way that feels invisible. Instead of aggressively killing apps or limiting performance, OneUI 8.5 learns how you use your phone. It knows when to save power and when to give full performance. You don't feel restricted, and yet your battery somehow lasts longer. That balance is difficult to achieve, and Samsung finally seems to have nailed it. What really stands out, though, is how human the whole experience feels. Nothing feels forced. Nothing feels experimental. Everything feels like the result of years of understanding how people actually use their phones. Scrolling late at night, checking quick notifications, switching between apps, watching videos, replying to messages, repeating the same habits every day. And the beauty of it all is that OneUI 8.5 doesn't try to show off. It doesn't scream, "New update." It doesn't overwhelm you with changes. Instead, it quietly improves your routine until one day you realize something important. Your phone feels easier to use than ever before. You don't fight it. You don't think about it. You just enjoy it. And that's where OneUI 8.5 truly shines. Not in features, not in numbers, not in hype, but in how naturally it fits into your life, like it was always meant to be there. If you want, I can now continue with the next part where the experience becomes even deeper, with system intelligence, daily usage flow, and why this version feels like Samsung finally understood its users completely. And you know what's funny? The more time you spend with One UI 8.5, the more you stop thinking about features altogether. It slowly shifts from being something you explore to something you simply live with. You stop opening settings just to check what's new, because everything already feels right where it should be. That's the kind of update this is. It doesn't scream for attention. It earns it. One of the first things you start noticing after a few days is how calm everything feels. Not boring. Calm. The phone doesn't rush you. Animations don't jump. Transitions don't feel mechanical. When you swipe, it feels like the screen understands the speed of your finger. When you tap, the response feels natural, not robotic. Even the haptic feedback feels more refined, softer when it needs to be, stronger when it matters. It's the kind of detail most people won't talk about, but everyone will feel. Then there's the way One UI 8.5 handles your daily routine. It's almost like it watches silently and learns without being creepy. Morning usage feels different from night usage. Brightness, color tone, notification behavior, all of it slowly adapts. If you're someone who checks your phone the second you wake up, the screen doesn't blind you anymore. If you're someone who scrolls late at night, the interface feels easier on the eyes, more relaxed, less harsh. What really stands out is how the system starts predicting you, not in a flashy AI way, but in a very human way. You open certain apps after lunch, they load faster. You always reply to certain people instantly. Their notifications feel more visible. You ignore some apps completely. They quietly step back. It feels like your phone is learning your rhythm instead of forcing you into its own. And let's talk about the overall feel of the interface, because this is where One UI 8.5 truly shines. Everything looks cleaner, but not empty. Minimal, but not boring. The spacing feels just right. Icons breathe. Menus don't feel crowded anymore. Even long settings pages feel easier to scroll through because the layout guides your eyes naturally. It's one of those things you don't notice immediately, but once you do, you can't unsee it. The animations deserve special mention. They don't just look smooth, they feel meaningful. When you open an app, it feels like it comes forward instead of popping up. When you close it, it gently settles back. Multitasking feels fluid, almost playful. Switching between apps doesn't break your focus. It feels continuous, like everything is part of one flowing system instead of separate windows fighting for attention. And then there's customization, the soul of One UI. With 8.5, Samsung didn't just give more options, they made customization smarter. Wallpapers blend better with system colors. Widgets adjust themselves depending on size and placement. The system color palette finally feels balanced instead of random. Your phone starts to look less like a default device and more like your device, without you having to try too hard. One of the most underrated changes is how One UI 8.5 handles small interactions. Things like adjusting volume, switching sound modes, or toggling Wi-Fi now feel smoother and quicker. No lag, no awkward delay, even the vibration feedback feels more intentional. It's like Samsung finally tuned the small moments that make up 90% of daily phone use. Performance-wise, the difference isn't about raw speed, it's about consistency. Apps stay in memory longer. Switching between them doesn't cause reloads as often. The phone doesn't heat up randomly. Even during heavy use, everything stays stable, and that stability creates confidence. You stop worrying about whether your phone can handle something. You just use it. Battery behavior also feels smarter, not stricter. Instead of aggressively killing apps, the system manages power in the background quietly. You don't feel like features are being taken away just to save battery. It feels balanced, like the phone knows when to push and when to relax. Over time, you notice you're ending your day with more battery left than before, without changing your habits. And what really makes One UI 8.5 special is how natural it feels across different types of users. Whether you're someone who loves customizing every detail or someone who never touches settings, the experience adapts. Power users get depth, casual users get simplicity, and both feel equally supported. The design language also feels more mature now. Nothing feels experimental or half-finished. Everything looks intentional. Icons, fonts, animations, spacing. It all feels like part of one vision. Not like features added over time, but like something carefully designed from the ground up. As you keep using it, something interesting happens. You stop thinking about updates. You stop checking what's new. Because the phone just works the way you expect it to. And that's the biggest compliment any software can receive. One UI 8.5 doesn't try to impress you in the first 5 minutes. It wins you over in the long run, day by day, interaction by interaction, until one day you realize you haven't felt annoyed by your phone in a long time. No random lag, no confusing behavior, no unnecessary complexity. It feels stable, it feels reliable, it feels personal. And honestly, that's what makes One UI 8.5 special. Not the flashy features, not the marketing lines, not the update number, but the feeling that your phone finally understands you and works with you, not against you. And that's exactly how software should feel. Have you ever noticed how some updates feel loud, full of promises, full of words, but when you actually use them, nothing really changes? And then there are updates that don't talk much, don't try to impress you in the first 5 minutes, but slowly, quietly, start changing the way you use your phone every single day. That's the kind of update One UI 8.5 feels like. Not flashy, not dramatic, just deeply, surprisingly human. From the very first unlock, there's this strange sense that the phone understands your rhythm a little better than before. Not in an artificial, look what I can do way, but in a calm, natural way. The animation doesn't rush, it doesn't drag either. It simply moves with you. You swipe, it follows. You pause, it waits. It feels less like software reacting and more like a surface responding. And that's the thing with One UI 8.5. It's not trying to steal attention. It's trying to remove friction. You feel it when you unlock your phone half asleep in the morning. The brightness adjusts softly instead of blasting your eyes. The text looks easier to read. Notifications don't scream at you. The important ones sit quietly on top. The unimportant ones stay out of your way. It's as if the phone already knows how your mornings usually go. No setup, no toggles. It just behaves. When you land on the home screen, the first thing that hits you isn't a feature. It's a feeling. Everything looks cleaner, calmer, more balanced. Icons feel lighter, almost like they're floating instead of sitting flat. The spacing feels intentional. Nothing feels cramped. Nothing feels empty. It's that rare balance where the screen feels full but not busy. The animations are where you really start to notice the difference. App openings have a softness to them, like they're breathing instead of popping open. Closing apps feels smooth and natural, not abrupt. Even switching between apps feels different, more fluid, more connected. You stop thinking about performance because nothing interrupts your flow anymore. And then you realize something interesting: you're moving faster, but it doesn't feel rushed. The quick panel is a perfect example of this new philosophy. At first glance, it looks familiar, but as you use it, you realize it's adapting. The toggles you use most become easier to reach. The ones you barely touch quietly move out of the way. Brightness and volume controls feel more precise, smoother to adjust, more responsive to small changes. It's not redesigned for beauty. It's redesigned for behavior. One UI 8.5 starts learning you without making you feel watched. You open the same apps every day. The phone prepares them before you even tap. You usually reply short and casual. The keyboard picks up your tone. You switch apps a lot while working or studying. Multitasking becomes smoother without you doing anything extra. Everything happens in the background silently, like a well-trained assistant who knows when to step in and when to stay quiet. And multitasking, this is where One UI 8.5 quietly shines. Split screen feels natural now. The phone understands which app deserves more space. Floating windows don't feel like clumsy pop-ups anymore. They feel intentional, like real tools. You can move them, resize them, stack them, and nothing breaks. No reloads, no stutters, no frustration. It feels like the phone finally understands that people don't use one app at a time anymore. Even simple things like copying text or switching between tasks feel faster, not because the phone is faster on paper, but because the system gets out of your way. There's no delay between